Okay, next in the defensive operations stuff. Considerations: urban warfare, weapons employment. Sighting your weapon to get the best effect. Once again, shameless plug, Patreon channel up there. I try posting videos, articles, and different things I come across every 2-3 days to go along with what I'm trying to teach for that week if I have a particular area I'm trying to cover. This last week is defensive, so stuff related to that. Next week is going to be kind of a mix of stuff. A little bit of survival, a little bit on weaponry. Different videos that I've come across recently. If you like what I do, kick me $1 or $2 or $5, whatever you so choose. If you want to contact me, you can do it on the back side of Patreon because YouTube does not allow us to talk to each other anymore outside the comment section. They want to make sure that the cops can monitor all communications easily without having to have some additional software installed to allow them to be able to do that. So now back into the video itself here. Urban warfare, mount, military operations in urban terrain. We are a defender. We are trying to defend a section of city. The city has been bombarded. There's been fighting going on for a while. Right now, think of it in this little general battle space that we have here. We have higher buildings over here, larger buildings, so those would be your storefront, your office building, apartment building type. They're fairly close to the street. Over here we have more residential, smaller type places. This one here is a business which has kind of collapsed. We have rubble that has fallen down across the roadway, and we're trying to defend this area. We're trying to keep the enemy on this roadway here, try to keep them inside this alley of death. We've closed off the road up here with steel hedgehogs. The road down here we put in a log crib. There is videos I have posted on the log crib. I have not done one on hedgehogs yet. I've mentioned it inside the bridge barricade video, but that's about it. Now the enemy's going to come down. We need to think of how best to employ our weapon systems. Well, first off, what type of enemy are we expecting to face? Are we expecting to face armor, tracks? Are we expecting to face wheeled vehicles? Are we expecting to face primarily infantry? Now, in this rubble up here, we can always add a bit more rubble to it. We can hide a fighting position inside there. Use sandbag, use timbers, use concrete, whatever you have available. Conceal yourself inside a fighting position inside this rubble and bunker type position. Now if we're expecting to face armor, and if we have availability of it, we could hide a anti-tank guided missile in there. It could be direct fire primarily, along the lines of your Milans, your AT-13s, your AT-5s, along that stuff. Javelin, you got to have a larger opening, but it can do a direct fire mode also. That would allow us a better use of this roadway here. If we got a nice long stretch here that's nice and open, the anti-tank guided missiles will be easier and better employed in there. We have that nice large kill zone, a long kill zone, which will allow the missile to go the correct distance and arm before it hits the target. And then make sure that you aim that missile at the correct point on the tank. If it's coming towards you, Your best bet for breaching the armor is at that junction between the turret and the hull. You're not going to breach the hull, and it's not likely you're going to breach the turret either. But that little space between the turret and the hull, that little itty bitty crevice there, is typically a good weak spot that you can hit from the front with an anti-tank weapon and breach. Whether it's an old anti-tank gun, an anti-tank guided missile, an RPG, whatever you have available, even a recoilless rifle. It will breach through there. They're not going to have that much metal there. Now, if we're expecting more lighter vehicles, we can get by with putting in RPGs and law rockets. Anti-tank rockets, just like missiles, will have an arming distance. So you can't really fire them at point blank range and guarantee that it will arm by the time it hits the target. But even something like that in here, you get a nice wide, long field of fire. Now, if we're anticipating trucks, we're anticipating infantry, we could potentially put a heavy machine gun in here. An M2 Browning 50 caliber, 12.7 millimeter Dishka 38, maybe a Russian made Cord, KORD, cool weapon, current issue. It's going out to Russian troops, and it's going out to their little proxies around the world. Check into it if you haven't already. Or you could go more old school. You could put in, say, an M1919A4 on a tripod in there, maybe an M1917A1 water cooled. Then you get your nice wide, long field of fire. Nice flat trajectory and stuff. You could also put in there your general purpose machine guns. Your M60s, your M240s, your PKMs, MG3s, your Mag 58s on into infinity. Now, what about your infantry troops? The ones with the rifles, people with your squad automatic weapons, your M249s, your RPKs. Their best place to locate themselves will be on the sides, so that they're firing into the enemy from the side. More substantial weapons, you should face them from the front so that you get a wider kill zone. Your more light infantry weapons, locate them on the side. You don't need as long of a field of fire with them. Obviously, you can use grenades and that stuff too. If you're going to use grenades, try to do those primarily from upper stories. From your second story, your third story, from the roof. Tossing it down from above to get it inside that group of people. Try to get it inside the backs of trucks. Maybe on into the open turret ring on top of a vehicle. That was a big issue they came across in Iraq. Insurgents would wait on top of bridges, or they would wait on top of buildings. Well, we had this nice big chicken shield which went all the way around on the tops of the Humvees, guarding the 50 cals, the saws, the 240s, the miniguns, and all that stuff. Well, the insurgents just went above that and, you know, pulled a pin on a grenade and tossed it in, dropped it in from above. And then that chicken shield acted like a giant funnel, funneling that grenade right into the vehicle. They tried getting around that by putting caging over the top of the chicken shields or the top of the turrets. Sometimes it would be chicken wire, sometimes it would be some type of mesh, sometimes it would be camo netting. It really kind of depended on the unit. I don't know if they really ever standardized anything. And that caging they did, they tried to dome shape it so that if something hit, it would roll to the side. Now, in urban warfare, remember, It's not just 360 all the way around you, it's also above you and below you. You can have people hiding inside manholes, your little sewers. When a tank goes over the top, they see it, they hear it, they push that cover off to the side, they attach a magnetic type limpet charge to the bottom of the tank to breach on the weakest point on the tank, which is underneath. They can also move that manhole cover to the side, pop up behind the tank, and fire a light anti-tank weapon. You want something that's more compact, so that's where your M72s and your RPG-18s and that stuff come into play. Something that's short, you can pull right up out of the hole, fire it right into the back of the tank. You can also pop up out of there, use an automatic weapon preferably, along the lines of submachine guns or an automatic rifle, to hose down the enemy troops after they've gone past. Something that was common in Iraq, which caused a lot of frustration, insurgents would put EFPs and other IEDs on the underside of the manhole covers, and then as the vehicles would go over them, they would set them off directly underneath the vehicle, and that manhole cover acted as the marker so that the trigger man could see that, yes, the enemy target, the Allied coalition target, is right over the top of it. Now let's go downward here. Tanks really come to their own in urban warfare. That's where they really are the mobile bunker. We have a taller building here, multiple story. We have a tank here, which is just general. Weak spots on it. First off, as I mentioned, underneath. You set off something underneath, it's going to breach. Or at least it should, depending on the size. If you're just tossing a grenade under there, it ain't going to do it. But if you're going to set off a mine, the underside is the best. If you're going to use a magnetic charge, the underside is the best. Now, you can also toss Molotovs on the back. On the back deck where you have the air intakes, toss that Molotov, toss that Eagle Fireball, whatever you have, over the top of that. Get that to go off up there and set fire to the engine compartment. It will knock out the tank, turning it into a giant roadblock. Something that happened in Chechnya. The insurgents there would hide themselves in upper levels of the building. And this is really ballsy on this. You had one person as a gunner and then one or two people as his supports. He would have that RPG. He would lean forward out the window. He'd have one or two people holding on to him to keep him from flying out the window completely, and fire that RPG straight down into the top of the vehicle. Another weak spot, the top. It's not going to be as well armored as the front or the sides. How the Russians countered that? They started sending in ZSU 23-4s, anti-aircraft vehicles. 4 23mm anti-aircraft guns on a tank chassis that they could elevate to almost straight vertical, and that took care of some of those insurgents that were higher up in the buildings. Sometimes. And I guess they could do the same thing with a 2S6. For the US, the Bradley can elevate its turret pretty far, so it would be able to rake higher levels on a building, but not as easily as the ZSU 23-4. So the top is also a very vulnerable spot. Molotovs on the back if it's an infantry fighting vehicle, an APC, if it's buttoned up. Your grills on those are typically located towards the front. Now the back of the tank, especially like here we got more western style. I put on little vents on the back for the exhaust. Hit those with your light anti-tank weapons. Let the vehicle come past you. Move ahead just a little bit. Make sure you have your arming distance. Pop down in a crouch behind it, or just come in around the corner standing. Aim on the ass end of the tank. Fire it right into those rear grills on the back of the tank. Russian tanks do not typically have rear grills like that. Theirs are located primarily on top. The back of the tank is usually solid. The more newer ones, because this became a problem, they started sloping the rears a little bit towards the ground. So if you fired at the back, depending on the angle, it might hit it and follow the plate right into the ground. Back of the turrets are usually a good place to hit, but even then it's still going to be fairly thick armor on the turret, so be careful. If the tank has fuel tanks on the rear, something you've seen with Russian and Soviet tanks, puncture those fuel drums, those fuel tanks, let the fuel flow in, and then toss your Molotov on top of that to set fire to it. Hopefully. Now, if you can't kill it, get a mobility kill. Take out the track. Blow it off on one side. I would not personally waste an anti-tank weapon on the track, but if you had no choice, you could do it. One option would be tossing a mine right in front of the track. As it's getting closer, they're buttoned up, they're not going to be able to see good. Let it get up nearby. Toss that mine right in under the track there as they're starting to go past. As they're, a few feet away, they're ready to roll over it. You get out of the way, let the tank roll over the top of the mine, blow off the track on that side. You've created a giant roadblock, and it'll make it easier for you at that point to go after the crew inside and incinerate them in whatever way you find possible. You could have yourself a giant thermite grenade made out of a paint can that you put over the top of the hatch. Get it lit, get it burning, burn its way through the hatch, and then start chucking in a grenade. The explosion will be contained inside the tank, and it will cause them a very, very, very bad day. Automatic weapons and that stuff. First floor, upper floors. Upper floors a little bit better, but you want your enemy always guessing where the fire is coming from. Something you can do: open fire from one side of the street, get everyone concentrating on the one side. Jump up here. Get the fire coming here from over here first, and then getting everyone concentrating there, and then you have more people on this side concentrate their fire down in. That's another option. The anti-tank guided missiles, recoilless rifles, anti-tank guns, and that stuff. Try to sight those in areas where they have a nice, wide, long field of fire. So say your sports fields by schools, your high schools and that type of stuff. Sometimes government buildings will have this giant park in front of them. Sometimes that works. You come across that in World War II a lot also. Anti-tank guns being located on the sides in the buildings, firing right across that wide open area in front of the government building, turning it into a giant tank death trap. So these are just some ideas for you for urban warfare for employing the weapons. The defender always has the advantage. Never forget that. Always try to locate your weapon where it's going to have the best effect. It's going to cover the wider area, causing the most casualties. Always be prepared to displace, to move to a secondary position and a tertiary and other supplementary positions. The enemy will find you, they will locate you, concentrate their fires in your area. When you see they're starting to concentrate in your area, you need to be displacing, moving to that next position. Now for all my engineer brothers in the Patriot and militia movements, always remember, essayons.